Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. We're going to bounce back to the Virgin Islands, and we're going to discuss a new article from the Miami Herald that talks about the blowback on the Virgin Island elite after this whole entire Jeffrey Epstein situation. And I think the fact that Denise George is charging so hard is going to really draw the curtains open and show the spotlight on all of these people who were involved. And I don't know if that was Denise George's motivation to do all of this, because as you all know, I believe that while she's saying the right things at this point, I still believe that it's a money grab by the Virgin Islands. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't trust the Virgin Islands authorities at all. Now, there's a lot of, talk from Denise George. There's no doubt she's talking a good game. But like George R.R. Martin is apt to say, words are wind. Let's see some action. Let's see some action. Well, this story from the Miami Herald is talking about some of the elite down there who were obviously in the know about what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. So how in the world can Denise George and the Attorney General's Office of the Virgin Islands hard charge against Jeffrey Epstein now when these same very people were looking the other way? So if that's the case and it can be proven, then I would expect Denise George to go after some of these people that enable Jeffrey Epstein as well, if she's serious about justice. And I guess that'll be where the rubber meets the road, where we see if she's serious about justice or if she's just worried about getting a payday. So, to the article. The article, like I said, is from the Miami Herald, but it was reprinted here by Herald Mail Media. So it's what they do is they reprint the articles from the Miami Herald without the paywall. So that's where we're at right here. All right, headline. Jeffrey Epstein case threatens to drag Virgin Islands elite into the muck. Will it matter? Article was written by Jim Weiss of the Miami Herald. St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. The U.S. Virgin Islands opened up a new and explosive front in the battle over Jeffrey Epstein's $600 million estate last week when it included one of the sex offender's companies, Southern Trust, as a co-defendant in the case. Again, zero problem with that. I have no problem with Denise George putting all of these companies as co-defendants, because these companies are all no good. These companies shouldn't be spending any money right now. Everything should be frozen. All assets should be frozen. Not one single dollar should come out of the estate until we have a true accounting of what's there and how it's going to be dispersed to the victims. All right? There's no way in hell that this place should be paying money out, the estate that is, should be paying money out for gardeners or for someone to come groom the dog or any of that nonsense. Everything needs to cease. With the late amendment, the Attorney General's office seemed to be painting a target on some of the island's most prominent figures, including Governor Albert Bryan Jr. and a former First Lady, Cecile de Jong. Look, if that's the case, and they're gonna go after these people who look the other way and enable Jeffrey Epstein and surely received dirty money from him at some point. I bet you if you trace those bank accounts and you follow the money, you'll be led to your destination. There is no way that Governor Albert Bryan Jr. and former First Lady Cecile de Jong did not receive dirty money from Jeffrey Epstein. I don't have any evidence to prove that, folks, right? And I always tell you that if I don't have any evidence, but it doesn't pass the smell test to think that they would be looking the other way just for no benefit to themselves and for no reason. Social media and the island's legal community erupted with speculation that the powerful officials might get dragged into the mire created by Epstein's criminal enterprise and human trafficking ring. This is important. They're calling it the criminal enterprise now, and that's a step in the right direction. As you all know, I've been calling it a criminal enterprise pretty much since I've started this podcast, and the only reason I've recognized what it is because it's very similar to the other criminal enterprises in the world, right? They have all the same telltale signs. And the fact that the media wasn't calling it a criminal enterprise, that wasn't going to stop me from calling it what it was. It's the way it was set up. It's set up like the mafia almost. You have the Godfather, which is Ghislaine Maxwell or Jeffrey Epstein, depends, it's debatable. And then you have, the Capos, the Leslie Groffs, the Adriana Rosses, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have the soldiers, the enablers, blah, 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 blah. And there's a very strong parallel between what Jeffrey Epstein had going on and what all the rest of the organized crime organizations do. So it's interesting to see that the author is calling it a criminal enterprise. I think it's significant. It's always significant to recognize the language that's being used as compared to what they were saying about Jeffrey Epstein and the trafficking ring previously. So we're seeing some movement there. But in an interview with the Miami Herald, USVI Attorney General Denise George squelched those rumors, saying there was no evidence, yet that might suggest broader responsibility. Well, there you have it, folks. There you have it. And just as I thought, Denise George does not give a lick about these survivors. It's all about the money. If she cared, this would be a net that would drop over all of these people. Everybody would be questioned. The author of the article just called it a criminal enterprise. He just got done calling it a criminal enterprise, but yet, here we are. At issue is Southern Trust, a purported data mining company that Epstein incorporated in the USVI, U.S. Virgin Islands, in 2011, and that the government believes was a sham to cover up his illegal activities. One of Southern Trust's longtime employees was De Jong, who was married to former governor Jean De Jong. That's nice. You know, and of course, Denise George isn't going to look into any of that. She ain't going to flip over any of those rocks. No, whoa, I can't go after my predecessors. I can't go after the other elites. We'll just go after the Jeffrey Epstein, the low-hanging fruit here, and we'll try and have a payday. Man, all the goodwill that I was building towards Denise George just evaporated by reading that one paragraph that she says there's no evidence that might suggest a broader responsibility. Are you kidding me right now? No, this happened in a vacuum. This all happened in a vacuum. Nobody knew what was going on. That's what they want us to believe. They want us to believe that there's no one that is responsible for what Jeffrey Epstein did in positions of power, that the elite had no idea what he was doing, and how dare we even question them? Asked if Southern Trust employees might come under investigation, George said it was too soon to tell. People can only be liable for evidence that leads to them, she said. Just because a person may be there and working, it does not mean that they committed a crime. Yeah, no shit, do your job and open an investigation, Denise George. All right? Stop trying to grift. Stop trying to get yourself a piece of this fortune here, and do yourself a favor, do the country a favor, do the territory a favor. Open an investigation. How are you going to know if these people committed crimes? Nobody's saying just because they worked there that they committed a crime. Nobody. Who's saying that? Just like if you hung out with Jeffrey Epstein at a party, that doesn't mean you were involved in his trafficking ring. We have to have evidence, but how can we have evidence if we don't have investigations? Likewise, it would be irresponsible to judge people who visited Epstein's private island, Little St. James, where he allegedly lured and sexually exploited women and girls. Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't think anybody should have been visiting that island, to be honest with you. Just because someone visited the island doesn't mean they committed offenses on the island. It doesn't even mean they knew, she said. We have to be careful in calling out people or going after people. You can ruin a person unnecessarily. That's why I'm so focused on following the evidence and seeing where it can go. Well, I agree with her there. I do the same thing on this podcast. If you notice, I only really talk about the people that are already being put on blast. I don't, dig into people that, this person might have a connection, or this person was photoed with Jeffrey Epstein. No. I only follow the evidence as well. I'm not here to, start rumors or, talk out of the side of my neck. And if I do have an opinion on somebody, I always clearly state, well, this is my opinion. But the fact of the matter is, how can you have the evidence if you don't have an investigation? There's enough here for a lot of these people that even just visited the island, to be honest with you folks, for them to, at the very least, have to answer some questions. So what they need to do is throw a wide net over this. That way they can talk to whoever the hell they need to talk to. Epstein began ramping up his dealings in the sun-kissed U.S. territory following his 2008 guilty plea to state prostitution charges in Palm Beach County, Florida. In December of 2012, he went before the island's Economic Development Authority, where Brian was the chairman at the time, to ask for tax breaks for Southern Trust Company. Of course he did. According to Epstein, the company would build a cutting-edge consulting service that would mine DNA and financial data for a global clientele. Among other things, the database would allow pharmaceutical companies and doctors to use this mathematical model to test drug protocols. Literally none of that was going to occur. It was all a way for him to wash his money. Jeffrey Epstein was involved in so many elaborate plots for him to be able to wash this dirty-ass money that he was getting from his buddies in the mega group and elsewhere that it's not even funny at this point. So my company's algorithms will, in fact, digest the information as best as they can currently and then spit out its recommendations. Epstein, just 3 years removed from serving a jail term in Palm Beach County and registering as a sex offender, told the EDA board. So you'll have computer-generated solutions for medical problems, which is the next century's work on how to get people healthy. Mind you, folks, this is all after he served his jail term. So he was in front of this board yapping about all this nonsense that nobody cares about. Let's be real. You're not even a scientist, buddy. You didn't graduate from college. You're certainly not a scientist. You're a faker. You're a sick bastard. And why the Virgin Islands would even entertain listening to this guy is beyond me. Oh, wait. No, it's not. It's all about the dough. It is all about the dough. Do you think that he wasn't greasing their palms so that this would go through? Do you think that these people didn't get a fat bag of dough? Stop it. After agreeing to make a $50,000 a year charitable donation to support the Island Scholarship Fund, well, there you go, there's one of them, Southern Trust was given a 90% exemption from its income tax and a 100% exemption from gross receipts, excise, and withholding taxes. Must be nice. Must be nice to go somewhere as a pedophile, go in front of the EDA, and then before you know it, you're not paying taxes, you have a new business you're running so you can wash your other money, everybody's looking the other way, and it's just one big, gigantic pedophile party, isn't it? Fast forward to Jeffrey Epstein's second arrest, and then death. Oh, and now nobody in the Virgin Islands knew anything, and everyone's horrified, and Denise George is this crusader who's going to save the world. Oh, spare me. According to minutes from the 2012 meeting, Epstein was never questioned about his sex offender status. Of course he wasn't. Why would they do that? If they did that, well, they might be putting a dent in the cash cow then, right? They got to have their golden calf. They got to make sure that they're getting their dough, and they don't care where they get it. Even so, the lucrative deal allowed Southern Trust to avoid paying $73.6 million in taxes from 2013 to 2017 on aggregate income of $656 million, according to court documents. It also allowed Epstein personally to avoid an additional $71.3 million in taxes. See, again, the Virgin Islands lets him get away with all of this, right? Because a few people get their pockets stuffed, and the Virgin Islands itself misses out on $73.6 million in taxes from the Southern Trust, and then another on top of that, $71.3 million in personal taxes. So we're talking $144.9 million in taxes that the Virgin Islands left on the table because some of their politicians wanted to fatten their pockets. So Denise George, do yourself a favor and do the right thing and investigate the other people that were involved in this situation, okay? It is clear that the Southern Trust Company did not perform the informatics business represented to the EDC and could not have generated the business income attributable to that business, the government said in an amended complaint. Instead, upon information and belief, Southern Trust Company existed to secure tax benefits for Epstein, to employ individuals associated with Epstein's enterprise, and to provide a source of income to support his criminal activities and properties in the Virgin Islands. You knew all of this, okay? The Virgin Islands knew all of this. The people that allowed this to occur, they knew all of this. They knew that this wasn't going to crack off. They knew that this was just a washing station. This might as well have been the car wash from Breaking Bad. Have an A1 day. It's the same old stuff. It's the same story that's been going on for years and years and years and years. Asked if Brian and other board members should have been aware that Southern Trust Company was a scam, George said it appeared the agency had been duped. She's covering up for them. She's engaging in a cover-up for the people who came before her, for all of her friends. We have the elites who cover up for each other. Well, that's what happens in law enforcement as well. They all stand over each other and cover it all up. The rest of us be damned. Isn't that nice? Isn't it just fantastic, folks? Just take a look at the two-tier justice system. Not just in the mainland, not United States, obviously. Oh, no. But it stretches all the way to our territories as well. Have a nice, hard look at your two-tier justice system in action, folks. Rules for thee, not for me. Epstein made those representations to the EDA, an independent government agency. The EDA relied on those misrepresentations in order to issue the benefits. So there's not anything on the EDA. It was Southern Trust that made the representations, and that's what the complaint is saying. So you're telling me that your austere body of the EDA is so ignorant that they believed a child sex offender who just got out of prison recently and who had served time for being an offender and is a registered sex offender, that's somebody that you're going to believe and you're not going to vet? You're just going to take it at face value? Give me a break. Give me a break. The Virgin Islands does not get one single penny out of this trust, if I can help it. Officials at the EDA said they were not immediately authorized to talk to reporters, and the governor's office did not immediately respond to queries. Of course not. Let's get together. Let's brainstorm. Let's come up with the official narrative. What's going to be our canned statement? Just how Epstein operated beneath the radar for so long has been a running question on the islands. Not a running question for me. You spread around enough money, you can do whatever you want. We all understand that. Especially in a place like the Virgin Islands. No offense to the Virgin Islands, but it's not a very rich place, right? It's, there's not a bunch of rich people running around the Virgin Islands. And you got Jeffrey Epstein showing up with all of this dough, and he starts spreading it around to these government officials. Of course they're going to start pocketing it. That's how it's been going on in America since Tammany Hall in New York, folks. But George said there was no overt indication that Epstein was doing anything illegal, despite Epstein's well-publicized legal problems in Palm Beach, where he initially had been accused by dozens of underage girls of sexual abuse. There was no overt indication, but I thought everybody knew what he was up to, Miss George. That's what you said, right? All the people in the airports, the workers, everybody knew what he was doing, you said. But now nobody had any idea. Now, because people are asking questions about your austere buddies on the EDA, you have no answers. You're protecting them. Good job, Denise George. Way to lose even more credibility, in my opinion. Although he pleaded guilty to a dramatically reduced charge in Palm Beach County, his privately owned Cay in the Virgin Islands came to be known in the tabloid press as Orgy Island or Pedophile Island. Again, and that's pathetic right there, too. That's an indictment of the news media. Why did the media leave it up to the tabloids to report this? Why did the media leave it up to places like the Inquirer to report this? You know why? Because if it came out in the tabloids, people would be less likely to believe it. And that was their goal. The media is complicit. The media ran cover. The media enabled Jeffrey Epstein. Nonetheless, when George became Attorney General in April, she says she scoured police and legal records. There were no complaints filed against him. Yeah, of course there weren't. People didn't want to end their cash cow. How many times do I have to say it, Denise George? We're reading. Look, she is not a good player in this situation. She's a bad actor in this situation. She doesn't want justice. She wants to defend her predecessors in the Virgin Islands, and she wants to act like they had no idea what was going on. To now say that the U.S. Virgin Islands didn't do enough to stop him is unfair, she said. How can you blame the Virgin Islands? It's almost like blaming a victim for something that happened to them. It's like blaming a homeowner for a burglary because they might have left the window unlocked, she said. Epstein and his enterprise were very, very good at concealing their actions. Oh, you're a liar. Straight up liar. I'll say it too. Denise George, you're a liar. You just eject yourself from this whole entire case. Let the professionals handle this. You're bungling this. You have no idea what you're doing. All right? How can you blame the Virgin Islands? Well, maybe because people in high positions were working for Jeffrey Epstein while being married to leaders in your country. Okay? Not only that, everyone was getting their palms greased. He was getting all sorts of tax breaks. What, did that just happen? He just woke up one day and the Virgin Islands decided, all right, Jeffrey Epstein gets whatever he wants. Or were they engaged in backroom dealings? Do the right thing, Miss George. Not only did they elude local authorities, they eluded federal authorities too, she added. Federal authorities are here and human trafficking is a federal offense. That shows you how good they were. Oh no, they weren't good. They were being protected at a federal level. We all know that they were owned by intelligence. But on the Virgin Islands, you all knew. You said it yourself. Everybody knew. You said it yourself, Miss George. And for you to come out now and act like nobody knew in your government is an absolute and utter slap in the face to anybody who is paying attention to this. After the Miami Herald series Perversion of Justice, which focused on the women and girls Epstein abused, the financier, pedophile, was rearrested on federal sex trafficking charges, and dozens of women have come forward to allege that Epstein sexually abused them when they were minors. Epstein was awaiting trial in New York when he was found dead in his cell. An autopsy found that he hanged himself, allegedly. Since then, the global media buzz, numerous reports have emerged of people seeing the financier, pedophile, and his friends arriving at the St. Thomas airport with young girls and then being taken to a secluded island by boat or helicopter. Yeah, everybody knew, okay? So don't act like nobody knew, Miss George. In retrospect, those actions seem damning, but even the airport employees who witnessed it didn't report it at the time, George said, because there were no clear warning signs. Oh, please, this is such a, you know what? This is a cover piece for them. This is an absolute cover piece for them, and she thinks it's going to work. It's not. The airport staff were thinking that it could have been nieces and nephews and grandchildren, she said. They didn't see anything inappropriate, and then they were whisked away from the airport. So they didn't see anything appropriate. But this was occurring after he was already registered as a sex offender, after his first trial, after everybody had come forward, after Maria Farmer had come forward, after all of this. But nobody knew anything, huh? That's what you would have us believe. George, who was a USVI prosecutor before becoming an attorney general, has emerged as the bane of the Epstein estate. No, as the bane of the survivors, okay? As the bane of everybody who wants to see justice in this case. She does not care about justice. If she cared about justice, she would open up an investigation into all the people that came before her and see where the money went. How many of them became rich off of Jeffrey Epstein while the Virgin Islands missed out on over $144 million in tax revenue? His lawyers have been pushing to create a voluntary compensation fund, meaning a way to be compensated without having to go to court for his dozens of victims until she put a lien on the entire estate, which is estimated at more than $600 million. George says the freeze is necessary to keep Epstein's lawyers from draining accounts before the scope of the damage is clear. Agreed with that. I've said that before. That's a good move on her part. But at this time, the only reason she's doing that, in my opinion, obviously, the only reason she's doing that is so that she knows that the Virgin Islands is going to have access to that money. She wants that $144 million back. Well, guess what? You guys shouldn't have been in bed with a pedophile. Point blank, period. That's exactly what you were. You were in bed with a pedophile. You enabled the pedophile. And now, when all's said and done, and the curtain gets drawn back, and everybody sees the second act of your play, all of a sudden now you're the victim. All of a sudden the Virgin Islands is the victim. All of a sudden the Virgin Islands is the hero in this story. No way. That's not going to happen. She also says his legal team has repeatedly failed to provide complete inventory of his assets or explain their expenses. In court earlier this month, it was revealed that, after his death, his estate transferred $12 million to Southern Country, a shadowy bank set up by Epstein. When asked by the probate judge about it, Epstein's lawyer said the transfer had been a mistake. Again, that's horrible that it happened, right? But why is the Southern Country Bank, why was that allowed to be opened in the Virgin Islands in the first place? Why'd the regulators approve that? Who are these regulators? Has anybody talked to them? What did they get in return? We have answers, but no question. I mean, we have questions, but no answers here. And Denise George certainly isn't providing any of them, and she's certainly not giving me any faith that she's doing the right thing. They don't want to reveal that what their expenses are, and that concerns me, George said of the accounting. And they have made so many excessive payouts with no explanation. As far as I'm concerned, we cannot afford another $12 million mistake. You're right about that. The survivors certainly can't. But guess what? Your whole entire motivation is being driven by you wanting this money for the Virgin Islands. That's exactly what it looks like. Because if not, you'd be going after the people in the Virgin Islands as well who helped facilitate this. In addition, George says it's unacceptable for Epstein's lawyers, some of whom were named co-defendants in the amended complaint, to be involved in setting up the victims' fund. I actually agree with that as well. I think it should be an independent group of people that set it up. Some independent group. There's smarter people than me out there to make those decisions, obviously, but there has to be some sort of independent commission set up of people that have nothing to do with this case and have them dole out the money, not the estate. Give me a break, because I agree with George about don't get it twisted. I agree with George when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein's estate. It's filled with scumbags, chiselers, embezzlers, fraudulent actors, and scuzz. In addition, George wants the estate to set aside Epstein's 2 islands. Oh, excuse me. I'm very much opposed to what is proposed by the estate. It's not fair or impartial, she said. The victims ought to be compensated in a manner in which they deserve to be. And before that, the estate needs to be accountable and transparent, and that is not happening. In addition, George wants the estate to set aside Epstein's 2 islands and an undetermined amount of assets for any future claims by the United States Virgin Islands. There you go, folks, right there. They slipped it in for you. Asked what an appropriate amount might be, she said it was premature to discuss it until it's clear what the value of Epstein's entire estate was. I am going to keep focused on what is in the interest of the government of the Virgin Islands and the interests of the survivors that have come forward and have not come forward, she said, and we want to protect these islands for the future to curtail these kinds of crimes so this sort of thing never happens again. She has it right there. And she even says it first. I am going to keep focused on what is in the interest of the government of the Virgin Islands. She says it before she even says on what's in the interest of the survivors. It's right there for you, folks. Just read between the lines and see what's going on down here. It's an absolute and utter shit show what's going on in the Virgin Islands, and it makes my blood boil. It makes my blood boil because all it does is it pushes back these survivors getting their peace. And if anyone has ever deserved a payout in any situation, it is these survivors. Denise George, in my opinion, is not a reliable good guy in this case. She's just another person that's adding more steps and more hoops for these survivors to jump through, and it disgusts me to watch. It really disgusts me to watch, and especially a double dose of disgust knowing that nobody that was in the government at the time, none of these people that approved Jeffrey Epstein's bank or these or any of that, are ever going to have to answer any questions for why they did that, for why they enabled Jeffrey Epstein's behavior, and why they let themselves be used as a vehicle for Jeffrey Epstein to commit these heinous crimes and abuse, rape, and assault young girls and women for decades on end right under their noses. Unacceptable. All right, folks, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. And if you like our work here at the podcast and you enjoy the content and you'd like to help out, you can go to the description box and click on the GoFundMe link that you find there. All right, everybody, I will be back later on tonight for the Daily Drop, and we'll get it cracking once again. Hope you all enjoy your Sunday.